ahead and get things started with some slides. Was anyone at the select board meeting on Monday? Show of hands. So a few. This is going to be a repeat for those of you. I'm just going to go through these very quickly. There's not a lot of detail here, and I'll explain why. But I'm hoping we can get to the point of the evening where we open it up to questions, discussion, dialogue. I think that's really where the meat and potatoes of tonight's get together is going to be, and I really appreciate you all coming out and being here tonight. I'll just jump right in. My name is Brad Wilson. I work for a company out of Minneapolis called Ecos Energy. We provide project development services for ground-mounted solar projects at various locations around the country. We're here tonight to talk about the Battle Creek Solar Project, which is a collection of three technically independent solar projects: Battle Creek 1, Battle Creek 2, Battle Creek 3. The project owner company is Otter Creek Solar LLC, which is a subsidiary of Alco Renewable Energy.
Is Ecos a subsidiary of Alco as well?
It is, yes. As I mentioned at the select board the other night, we base these introductory slideshows on kind of the template we have, and I've gone ahead and kind of stripped out the Solar 101 portion that talks about here's what a solar module looks like, here's how the sun's energy gets turned into electricity. I think my impression is that the people of Bennington are well enough familiar with solar at this point that it's not needed. If anybody is interested in a more of a crash course on solar, please just approach me. I'd be happy to get you some information or talk to you one-on-one. So the really quick and dirty basics, Battle Creek Solar, it's a distribution scale solar electricity generation. When I say distribution scale, I mean the project does not plug into the transmission line system. Rather, it goes into the distribution circuit. That's the same circuit that serves the local homes and businesses. So the electricity generated by this project will be used on the local distribution grid. It's a ground mount project using fixed tilt racking. And when we say ground mount, we mean solar modules that are mounted on racking, steel posts in the ground. We're not talking about a rooftop project on top of a home or a business. This is a ground-mounted project on steel and aluminum racking. When I say fixed tilt, this is a type of racking that is in a fixed location. There's no motors, no gearboxes, no moving parts, no moving pieces. The modules don't move to follow the sun or anything like that. They are in a fixed position. This project would sell electricity to the local utility through that distribution grid. That's the purpose of a project like this, to generate electricity, sell it to a local utility. That's the basic business model right there. And this project, for requirements of the Public Service Board in Vermont, had 45-day notices sent out in early April. Could I ask for another show of hands? Who in the room received an invitation from me to this meeting? Excellent. So we've got some adjoining and nearby landowners. And who did not receive an invitation directly, but came here because they heard about the meeting from somebody else, or just have an interest in being here tonight? Excellent. We've got some other hands there. So those of you that received an invitation from me directly, thank you for helping get the word out to some of the other folks. You've got copies of the 45-day notices that were sent. And these 45-day notices are introductory notices required by the Public Service Board. We send them. They're required to be sent to the town officials, state officials, and regional commission officials. But we wanted to make sure that the adjoining and nearby landowners also receive copies from us as a courtesy. It's important to note that now the Public Service Board's 248 process still makes my head spin. I don't fully understand it sometimes, but it's important to note that 45-day notices are not an application. We have not applied for any permit here. These projects, if they were able to proceed, would require a certificate of public good from the Public Service Board. This is a preliminary step towards that, but these are not applications. We haven't filed an application for any permit or certificate here. What the 45-day notices are meant to do is is indicate to the town, to the regional commission and state agencies that we have a piece of property, we're thinking about doing a solar project on it, we're looking at developing it, we have some ideas about how we might do that, and in a minimum of 45 days, we could file applications for that certificate of public good. On these particular 45-day notices, I believe they indicate that the 46th day, and the day that we could file, would be May 24th. That is the earliest that we could file. I will tell you tonight, we absolutely will not be filing that early for a couple of reasons. There's a lot of work to be done between now and then. And the big work that needs to be done is engaging the town, engaging the neighbors, engaging other interested parties in the area. We want to open a dialogue. We want to get your input, your comments, your feedback. We want to answer your questions because we are open to making changes to the site design shown in these 45-day notices. We're hoping that there's a site design that can work for us and also work for the town and also work for the neighbors. And it's my job to dig until we find what that design looks like.
Let me ask a question, Brad.
Joe.
You said that Monday night, you said again tonight. So let me ask you, will you have a meeting with the property owners of the town again before you file your petition with Public Service Board?
Absolutely.
Because the clock is a very narrow window for us, once you file that petition.
Right. I'll make a commitment to you right now that we'll have a meeting with the select board and make sure that notices go out, where I will present a final version once we think we've gotten there before we file a petition. That filing of our petition will not be a surprise.
Okay.
And this process of working with the town, working with the neighbors, engaging in this dialogue, I expect this to take a number of months. It's not going to happen overnight. And there will probably be multiple iterations of site plans as we work on implementing ideas that we get from you in the town, as we work on trying creative ways to meet the needs that we're hearing in comments and feedback. It'll be a multi-round process, and we're just at the very, very early stages of it here. I met with the select board on Monday night and meeting with you all tonight. As I told the select board on Monday night, there are very few slides here. There's handouts available that just gives you hard copies of these, and there's very little detail included here. And the reason that there's not a lot of details is because I don't have a lot of detail yet. That's how early we are in the process of taking a look at the correct design for these projects. We wanted to get engaged early, talk to the town, talk to the neighbors before final decisions are being made to use your input to help guide the design of these projects. Because we're at such an early stage, we haven't developed the level of detail that you would typically see once a project is ready to put its application into the Public Service Board. And now that we're here, let's just go through some of these pretty quick. This is a zoomed out map of the Bennington area. The green arrow gives the general location of the property that we are taking a look at for these projects. Here's a zoomed in, kind of giving you the dotted line outline of the property in question. This is a roughly 76-acre piece of property, and it is kind of split into 3 distinct areas, as you can see here. But it is a single piece of property. It is generally located along North Bennington Road, Rice Lane, and Harwood Hill Road. The majority of the property sits behind the Home Depot and car dealership area at North Bennington Road. But there are some areas along Rice Lane and Harwood Hill Road as well. We can come back to any of these slides at a later time if anyone has any specific questions about this. Here's an aerial view showing you the project, or the property outline. You can see how the property sits within these boundaries. You can see we have a Velco transmission line running through the middle. We've got railroad going here, and the rest of the property you can see is fully wooded.
Right, you point out the fact that the Velco power line, that is the boundary between industrial and rural residential. Everything north of that is rural residential, everything south is industrial.
That's exactly right. Joe brings up a great point. I think the next slide is a zoning map, but what Joe is talking about is the Velco transmission line This property has a dual zoning, it's not all the same zone. Below the transmission line, we have approximately 41 acres that is zoned by the town of Bennington for industrial use. Above the transmission line, we have just over 30 acres, I think, of land that is zoned rural residential. And I think the next slide shows that, but I want to make one more comment about the fully wooded area. We feel like the fully wooded site provides some really interesting opportunities to very effectively screen these projects from public view. If you pay attention to solar in Vermont, there's great conversation happening statewide on where are these projects appropriate, where are they not appropriate. There's some rulemaking going on in Public Service Board. There's some new legislation coming out of the legislature right now. And depending on who you talk to, people have different ideas on where these things might be sited. There's definitely a group of people that lament projects that are sited in open field areas for a number of reasons. And one comment that I think you see very often is that projects sited in open field areas tend to be difficult to screen from public view due to the nature of the property. Starting with a wooded site offers some interesting opportunities to potentially carve out a footprint for a project in the interior of a property, leaving existing vegetation along the perimeter, providing very effective visual screening for communities and neighborhoods that are concerned about the visual appearance of these projects.
When you presented the Chelsea and Apple Hill projects, you very clearly said you weren't going to do any screening more than the minimum because shade causes a problem, obviously, with solar. So, I mean, I don't trust that you will maintain good screening at all.
Sure. Well, I'm not here tonight to ask you to trust me. I am here tonight asking for an opportunity to earn your trust. This is a different site, a different location, and a different site design. And I'm saying that I think we believe that this site offers some interesting opportunities for visual screening, and we'd like to work with the town and neighbors to get input on how best to proceed that way. Here's the survey of the property showing how the 76.5 acres are split up between the three sections. We have 40.6 acres to the west of the railroad, about 27 acres east of the railroad, and about 8.5 acres on this skinny rectangular piece north of Rice Lane. Here's that zoning map I was talking about. You can see that the transmission line easement clearly is the breaking point between industrial zone and rural residential zone. One of the things that drew us to this piece of property, we were first made aware of this piece of property at a public meeting for the Chelsea project that you mentioned. A gentleman approached us after the fact and said, he wasn't sure about the Chelsea property that we were talking about that evening, but hey, you guys should know about this piece of property that's for sale. It's behind Home Depot, the car dealership. Most of it's industrially zoned, and wouldn't that be a good spot? And so that's really how we came to know about this property, and we took a look at it and ended up deciding we'd like to pursue it a little further. So a majority of the property is zoned industrial for industrial use, but a decent amount is not. It's zoned rural residential. And that's, I think, probably going to be a big topic of conversation as we proceed in our dialogue with the town, the neighbors, and the folks here tonight. Ma'am?
Where's the wetland?
That's, I think, on the next map. So we'll be getting there. So the question was about wetlands on the site. There are Class 2 wetlands on the site. They have been delineated by a wetlands ecologist and are currently under review by the Agency of Natural Resources. There's a significant amount of wetlands on the site. And if you know much about A&R and wetlands permits, if we were to propose any impacts to those wetlands, we would have to apply to the Agency of Natural Resources for wetlands impact permit. The A&R is not very keen on approving wetlands impacts for the purpose of installing solar modules, especially in the case of forested Class 2 wetlands. And that's why, even on the 45-day notice site plans that we sent out, you see we propose to avoid those areas entirely, including 50-foot buffers around them. Let's get to that slide real quick. Yep, so here are class 2 wetlands that have been identified on this property. You can see a significant portion in the industrial area down here, although this section is mostly unaffected, and a significant portion here. At this point,
The problem with this map, though, people gotta realize, you're looking at a flat piece of paper, you're not looking at terrain. Look at where Howard Hill Hotel is and where Rice Lane is, that ground all slopes to the south into that area where the high tension line goes through. And when you see that, Brad, point to the tunnel with the railroad tracks. Right there, the water's collected and going into the major part of the wetlands down there. Brad, something come up today that I just heard, you know, I know these panels have gotta be washed, correct?
that's actually not correct. In
Well-
Vermont, it would be very, very uncommon for them to be washed. If they are washed, it's done with water only.
Okay, my point is, we're finding out, Rick, did you just find out PFA on your well? What was the reading?
180.
180, he's on the top of Howard Hill, right there where it's all sloping down to that.
Right.
My brother's having his tested because he's there, I'm gonna have mine tested. My guess we're gonna find that, my question to you is, if that water is containing PFAs that we think it is, that the state's telling us is, the feds actually, where do you get your water from with just clear water washing stuff off of it?
Sure, well, I think I heard that somewhere on the site there was an old well, but that
There
probably
is.
is not appropriate for use of pulling up water for module washing.
Right.
I've got a few ideas on how to address your concern there. Number one, we might be willing to consider putting into the petition a prescribed schedule for washing. I mean, I'll tell you right now, we are being told that solar projects do not wash the modules in the state of Vermont. You get enough rain, and the snow in the wintertime does a great job of scrubbing the modules as the snow slides off. Also, as opposed to locations like California or southern locations where there tends to be a lot of dry, dusty conditions, obviously that might be seasonal here, but you just don't get that as a regular rule. Would I want to completely preclude us from ever having the ability to wash the modules if it was necessary for some reason? Probably not. But we are open to discussion. I'm absolutely open to guaranteeing we will use water only.
Again, because the water from that area runs right into Lucette River.
Right. Well, can I ask you, do you have any ideas on if I was wanting to create a proposal regarding module washing that would meet this concern, what would it sound like?
You'd have to, my thinking, if you want to get in there, you'd have the expense of running village water from Route 7A where it comes in, from 7A, and you'd have to go down 67 to connect to there. I don't know the number of feet, I would say about
Sure.
500 to 600 feet off each one, just to get you into where you could pump it in, but I don't know.
In many locations that we have, we've got a number of these projects at various locations around the country. Many of them do not have water supply nearby. And so water is loaded onto water trucks at an offsite location and brought in. And we could definitely do some language about agreeing to, that's how we're going to get water to the site. Load up a water truck at an offsite location where it's attached to possibly city water, for example, and bring it in that way. So we could definitely get creative there. Ma'am?
Well, having been involved with you with the Chelsea Solar Project, and I would reiterate what I would agree with my neighbor who was questioning your statements about screening, because you never said a word to us about a water truck. When coming in, there's no water there to wash off these panels that you're planning to put in at Chelsea Solar. So that never came up. But when you were telling us about ongoing maintenance, you were simply saying every once in a while a small truck would be coming in to maintain the project. You never said anything about a major water truck.
I'm not saying anything about a major water truck at this time.
Well, I'm just wondering about the inconsistency here.
Could I suggest there is no inconsistency? When I talk about water truck, I'm talking about a typical 3/4 ton to full ton pickup with a water tank in it. I'm talking about any sort of semi-truck-like contraption or anything like that. So a large truck would not fit between the rows of solar modules. We're stuck on pickup trucks only here. Some more comments on wetlands here. So you can see portions of the site are covered by wetlands, and our current site design does not propose any impacts to those wetlands or 50-foot buffers. The only exception to that might be, as we develop the site designs further, would be access. Take a look at the property west of the railroad here. The only road frontage that we have is along Rice Lane, and the entirety of that road frontage is encumbered by wetlands. Now, the A&R cannot deny wetlands impact permit if you need to go through wetlands to get legal access to your property. Now, we're open to approaching neighboring landowners for the possibility of an access easement that would give us the ability to get onto this site without having to come off Rice Lane. And that's something we're actively involved in right now.
So you've talked to Gladstone and Carbone?
We've reached out to them, we haven't heard back. And we're actively involved in doing that, we have interest in that. But we can't compel any neighboring landowner to give us an access easement. I can't force someone to do that, it's not something I have control over. So at the end of the day, it's a possibility that we may need to approach the A&R for a driveway through this area, which is something that the A&R must give if legal access is the concern. A&R is not going to allow us to cut down in the wetlands for the purpose of installing solar modules, but they must give us legal access to the property.
Even though it's a class 2 wetland.
Even though it's a class 2 wetland. If it was a class 1 wetland. The A&R cannot stand in the way of legal access to a piece of property that has no other legal options for gaining that access.
But the land left with that border of Rice Lane, which is running up above. The lane, the other piece of land, the,
Right here?
yeah, that section right there.
What about that section? I'm sorry, I didn't hear the
You
question.
could access all that property from up there, right?
Well, we can access this property from Rice Lane here.
Right.
We can access this property here, Rice Lane, but we can't get over here because we can't cross the railroad with vehicle traffic. The western section here, the only road frontage it has is Rice Lane. And so, again, we're open to options, we're open to suggestions, and we're looking at a number of different ways we might be able to gain access to that western portion. And I'd love to hear your ideas if you have it.
I just have a question about the washing of the panels.
Oh, sure.
So if you're limited to whether it's, Appleville, Chelsea, Battle Creek, if you're limited to a water tank that fits in the back of a pickup truck, you have to have like a convoy to do 26 acres or 76 acres, or however many cleared acres it is.
Right.
That will come from Battle Creek. I mean,
I actually going to suggest that that's not correct. When we talk about cleaning modules of the water truck, we're not talking about a pressure washer that sprays water. These things use a water brush, which comes from the hose, and they are scrubbed, and only a very small amount of water comes out at a time, just to give enough moisture for that dust and debris to come off. So a single tank of water lasts a very long time when doing module cleanings, which is a good thing because making many multiple trips back and forth to get water, that adds up cost quick, and it may come as no surprise to you, but we're very interested in keeping costs low.
26 acres is a lot of water still. So I think it would be interesting, and for Battle Creek, what are those numbers? How many times are neighbors going to be impacted? Again, you said that from time to time,
Right.
there would be a pickup truck coming through to mow the grass.
Yeah.
Well, from time to time seems more like many times now.
Well, I'll say.
So that would be interesting.
Sure.
To have that information.
We can absolutely drill down and include the numbers of how, if we were doing a washing, which again, I'm saying it's very unlikely that we would ever do a washing in Vermont. If we were, how many trucks that might be and how often those trucks might be coming and going. I am 100% comfortable making a statement that these projects, if they were built even as proposed, are going to have far less vehicle traffic impact than a single family home.
Well, that would be interesting information to have on paper.
Absolutely. Ma'am?
I don't know if you can answer this or not. How is we've done these projects before, so, I mean, we have contaminated water.
Sure.
Now we have this, you know, our homes aren't gonna be worth anything, nobody's gonna buy these homes.
Right.
But, is there an impact on the property values?
We don't think so, and I will see that our eyes roll just right out of people's heads.
The town appraiser says there is.
What's that?
The town appraiser says there is an impact, and I've already told them that if it goes in there in either 2 or 3, that myself and my brothers want the town to come back and reappraise the property.
Yeah,
We'll go
because
down.
I'm right,
We
I'm
pay-
at
we pay-
313, Rice
We pay some of the
Lane.
highest taxes in the town for being rural residential, all of us that live here.
I mean, I'm right there, we're not gonna be able to do anything, nobody's gonna wanna buy that piece of, I mean, I'm gonna be right on the border of the 8 acres, that's where I am, right there. So,
Where's your
I would-
Big-
I'm
Go
right there,
north.
right,
Yes.
yes,
Okay.
right there. So, is there any way that anybody is able to get any information to us to see what? what
Yeah,
is
well,
good
I
for-
think you pointed at the wrong place for your property, I think.
It's up on Route 7.
It's up on Route 7, so
Oh, right,
yeah, that's our property.
No, where am I? No.
Right there. Yes.
That's your property.
That's your property.
You're on Route 7A.
The other end's my brother's
No,
property.
she's on Rice Lane. I'm on Rice Lane, I'm right there.
That's George.
That's my brother's.
I'm right next to George.
All right.
Okay, you're that mix, okay.
Okay.
Okay,
I'm in your sister's
Yeah.
old house, I think.
Okay, yeah, okay, that's all right.
so it's a great question, and I completely understand the question. If I was in your seat, I'd be asking the same question.
That was
I
my
don't-
next question, if it was you personally, if you had a home there,
Definitely.
how would you feel personally?
I don't have, I mean, I gave you my answer, and again, I think about half the people in the room, their eyes almost rolled out of their heads. We're here so early in the process, it's obviously a concern, and I would want to ask it. I don't have a straight answer for you on that question,
Okay.
but are there ideas on how we could do this project in a way that you didn't think would affect your property values? That's what
You
I
have
thought.
someplace.
Right. Well, that's a suggestion, and it's definitely one I'll take back to the team.
Well, one suggestion is, this is a huge project with all 3. So one suggestion would be that you don't do as big a project. For example, if all you did was in the industrial zone, you know, to the south and west of the railroad tracks, you're going to minimize the impact on the neighboring properties.
Mhm.
You're going to minimize the view from the neighboring properties like the Harvard Hill Motel and the Public House. You're going to minimize any impact on ag soils. You're not going to be in a rural residential area. You're only going to be in the industrial. That's a simple solution. You don't, maybe it's not going to be as grandiose and make quite as much money from it, but it's a functional project.
Right. I really appreciate that comment, and that will go back. That's one of the things we're talking about. In other scenarios, we have scaled back project size in response to community feedback. And that's something that, at this point, all options are on the table. Your point, Peter, echoes a comment we heard at the select board last night. One of the gentlemen behind the desk made the comment that if we were in front of them on Monday night with a site plan that was purely within the industrial area, they'd probably be giving us a standing ovation.
I don't think anybody would give you.
His words, not mine. I'm not sure I would 100% believe that, but his point was taken, that this particular piece of property has 2 zones, industrial and rural residential, and that it would be way easier to support a project that was entirely located within the industrial area. That is feedback we're listening to, feedback we're working and processing, and we want to keep the conversation going about that particular topic.
Brad, I want to see the documentation you're referring to that talks about minimum washing in Vermont, because everything I'm reading is there's companies out there that you can hire that will take care of the maintenance and washing for you. And they use chemicals and everything else to wash those panels.
Sure.
You keep referring to that. Please let me see the document that says Vermont doesn't need
Yeah.
it.
No, I don't have a scientific paper, but what I could do is put you in touch with some gentlemen with the construction company that built our project in Sudbury, Vermont. We just entered into an agreement with them to provide operations and maintenance services for that project. They gave us a draft agreement. It did not include any module washing services. And we asked them, went back to them and said, hey, like, shouldn't this agreement include, you know, an annual module washing? And they said, no, we own it on most of the solar projects and large solar projects in the state. We don't wash a single one of them. It's not needed. So I don't have a scientific paper to give you, but I can put you in touch with the gentleman with that comment. We could ask him some questions if you want.
Please do.
Absolutely. I'm going to make a special note of that. You may notice I'm not taking a lot of notes tonight. That's because we're being recorded and this video is going to be available for download and note taking later.
Can I ask a follow-up on that?
Yeah.
You just mentioned that you outsource, you contract out with somebody else who does the maintenance for these projects.
That's right.
So at that point, are you out of control? Do you have any oversight over what that means and how that's done?
Gotcha.
And the liability? Who's liable at that point?
Gotcha. That's a great question, and I think it's a really good question in the wider sense of how solar developments like this often work. Not all, but many solar developers will get a piece of land, get a project permitted, get it designed. Maybe they'll build it, or maybe they'll just get it to a point where it's just ready to be built, and then they'll flip it. They'll sell it to a separate owner, and they're out. That is not how we operate. We develop, build, and operate our projects for the project's life. We have no plans, no intent to flip these projects to other owners. These are assets that we hold and we operate. Now, we are a developer owner. We don't have electrician. Well, we do have a master electrician on staff. She's our asset manager. And she's in charge of taking care of these projects when they go live. But we don't have a fleet of technicians or maintenance personnel. And so we contract with local companies to actually go out and provide the labor of turning wrenches, mowing the grass when needed, things of that nature. But we own the project, we operate the project, we are liable, we hold the insurance, it's our project. We just contract that maintenance, similar to, you know, if you have a dishwasher go out home and you don't particularly know a lot about dishwasher repair, you hire someone to come in and do that maintenance, that labor for you. So that's the arrangement. Does that answer your question?
Well, yes, but to follow up what Joe was asking, if you hired a cleaning company, your understanding is they'll only use water, but he decides he needs to use chemicals, then what happens?
Right. So cleaning with water only, I'll make a commitment right now that if a CPG is issued for that project, that will be a condition in our CPG. You can hold me to that. Right, again, sir.
And that acre lot right there, I live west of that lot, no.
No, it's east.
East, I'm sorry, that right there.
Your schoolhouse.
How close are the solar panels gonna be to Howard Hill? Because this diagram
Sure.
shows something about 128 feet
Right.
from my house.
That's a great question. The site plan does show that. That's not necessarily the final site plan. We'd like, again, we're open to making changes to these plans before we get to a final plan, and that number can be different. I think at some point, we would like to ask the question of how far do you think it needs to be? And that's not a number you need to give me right now, but I will let you know that, you know, one of the other options that has been suggested to us from multiple parties is there any way, this site is so skinny, north to south, that by the time you implement the state-required 100-foot setback from Rice Lane and the state-required 50-foot setback from the backyard property line, there's only room for like 4 rows of solar modules. And one of the things that we've been asked to consider is there any way to leave this piece of property alone entirely? So that's something we're taking a look at. But if, you know, we'd also like to know if there had to be solar modules there, what distance would make you comfortable?
Well, let me ask you the question then, because the Route 78 corridor that I talked about Monday night, starting from the bottom of Howard Hill to Shasberry line, says nothing commercial within 500 feet on either side of Rice Lane.
Right.
Or, I'm sorry, of Route 7.
Mhm.
You take 500 feet, you're coming halfway down that piece of property that's 8 acres,
Right about there.
right there.
Yep.
And oh, by the way, the other 500 feet is right in my front yard, looking out my picture windows.
Right, absolutely. That comment about the scenic corridor, that's feedback that's going back to our design team.
I mean, that was in the plan long before we even thought solar anywhere. I mean, this has been the plan for a long time. It's not
Absolutely.
nothing new because you guys are in there. It's been there.
Absolutely. I'm going to pop to the next slide again. We can come back to any of these at any time. Here's a slide that shows primary agricultural soil overlay. This is the NRCS Ag Soils map, showing approximately 40 acres of mapped primary ag soils. While the site was used for agricultural purposes in the past, it's not being used for that purpose today and hasn't been for quite some time, nor is the surrounding area an active agricultural area. The Vermont Agency of Agriculture has issued an opinion that ground-mounted solar projects do not negatively affect the quality of agricultural soils. And so we agree with that the installation of our project would not negatively impact the quality of these soils. And we'd be working closely with the Agency of Ag to make sure that the project plans incorporate all the necessary approaches to protect the quality of that soil. We're also, of course, open and hoping to get feedback from you all, the town, the neighbors, folks here tonight, on any questions about primary ag soil. The next 3 slides are the actual site plans that were sent out with the 45-day notices. As I mentioned earlier, these are preliminary concepts. We're open to making changes with your feedback, and we look forward to investigating over the next weeks and months what we can do with these sites to make them a better design for the town and for the neighbors. I also mentioned that 45-day notices tend to show as large project as possible, so that they can be scaled down later. You can't go backwards. You couldn't show a small project in a 45-day notice and then end up making an application for a larger project. So these site plans pretty much max out the available land, and we're really looking forward to working with you, having dialogue, and finding out how these site plans can be modified and improved.
Did the state of Vermont get a letter saying that they are also flooding property owners? Did you send a letter to the state of Vermont?
You're talking about the railway?
Yep.
I don't think we sent them an invitation to this meeting, but they would be on the list of abutting property owners that would receive copies of the 248 petitions.
And will people who own the lease side of railroad track, will they be notified also?
I'm sorry, what was that?
The people who own the lease side of railroad track, will they receive a letter also, Vermont Railway?
The lease, it would be whoever is on the legal title.
The legal title is state of Vermont, but they lease it, sublease it to Vermont Railway.
Right. We're not legally required to send to them, but we can and will.
Okay.
We definitely want to get their feedback because there's some questions about how closely the modules could be put to property areas here. And if that would allow us to take some solar out of other locations that are a little bit more visually sensitive.
Sorry, go ahead.
In this one, there's an access road that's coming in from the west side of Project 2.
Yes.
But in the other one, it's on the east side. Can you explain that?
Right. So
Are there 2 access roads to that array?
Right, so Battle Creek 1 is tricky because we've got this
You are tricky.
railway coming through the middle
Right.
that we're not allowed to cross with vehicle traffic. So we have to have 2 vehicle access points to be able to access this area.
Couldn't that access road that leads down to that also serve?
Battle Creek 2,
Yeah, I'm just curious.
it could not. There are some rules in Vermont that for projects to be technically independent, they can't share common physical infrastructure. An access road is a piece of physical infrastructure. So certain state laws and board rules, there's some requirements that these projects be mechanically independent from each other. And shared shared access driveway would be considered physical infrastructure.
Do you know what law that is?
I don't have a particular law, but there was a Supreme Court decision a couple years ago. If you were to Google for SCOV law, blog, and we can chat about this later if you'd like. SCOV law blog. And then,
Brad,
Children.
Brad, you're distorting this a little bit.
In what way?
The Supreme Court decision said that to get the speed program, which is limited, projects have to be limited in size.
Right.
And the fiction is if you have different corporate owners, even though the people behind the corporation are identical, if you have different corporations, then the way the law was set up, those have to be treated as separate entities. Even though it's the same people, and as you say, these are all joint projects that are going in there. So when you talk about that you have to have the separate things, that's so that your project can get the benefit of the state program. If you weren't going to get into that state program, that wouldn't be an issue. So it's, you know, the decision, and I've also read the decision, was a very narrow interpretation of this particular statute that the solar developer wanted to get the benefit of, the speed program, and the Public Service Board said, no, you can only have one of these because the law was meant to limit very big solar developments, and the way around that was by just having each of these solar developments, even though it's the same people doing it, as Brad, you just said, you're doing this whole thing.
Of course.
You know, they treat them as little tiny individual ones as if they're separate people, separate companies, even though in reality they're not. It's a legal fiction.
Why?
That's the way the law was
That was the
written.
legislative intent of the bill, the speed bill, in the 204. I was one of the sponsors of it. The intent was to encourage more net metering, things of that sort, where you put up a solar panel on yours and I share power with you kind of thing. It was never designed for the kind of thing you see it right here.
And the Supreme Court didn't say that the spirit of the law was being violated.
In the
They did not.
decision he read, he said this is the way the law was written.
It's so weird, because it actually makes it worse for the neighbor.
The Supreme,
It makes it worse
we,
for,
trust me, we would love to be able to combine access points, things of that nature. The way this is written does require separate physical infrastructure.
That only requires a separate infrastructure if you are going to do a very, very large project like this. If you're going to do a much smaller project, it doesn't require that.
When you talk about a much smaller project, what size are you talking about?
Well, I don't know what the ultimate megawatts are, but I think it's 2.2 is the speed program.
Right.
And again, I don't know in here, what you're showing for this one, well, that's the one up in that corner. If, as I said before, you limit, you don't do any development in rural residential areas. You don't do any development to the east of the railroad bed, which is also prime ag soil.
Right.
So you've got these two, I don't know what that megawatt would be, but it's a much smaller project. And it's very well screened and it's all in industrial.
Right, that's true. And again, that's one of the ideas we're talking about internally. We'd like to continue talking about with you.
However, given experience with your company in our neighborhood, I live in Apple Hill, and from information that we have received through, media, normally when a site plan is laid out, it's not amended. It really pretty much is as stated. So I think that it's, from my point of view, it's important to understand that you're going to maximize the amount of solar panels that can be displayed on this land. So, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I think you have to understand that there's a fair amount of, distrust.
Sure, fair enough. And I'll repeat a comment I made earlier. I'm not here just saying, hey guys, trust me. Give me the opportunity to earn that trust and show you that when we file the applications for these projects, that the design can be something I hope you can support. If I could ask a special courtesy, it would be to judge these projects based upon what is filed with the board. after we've gone through weeks and months of working together on improving the site design. At that point, what we file with the board, that's what we're saying, this is what we intend to do, this is what we're trying to get approved. We're not at that point yet. Battle Creek 1, and we can talk further about the access road issue, but if both Battle Creek 1 and Battle Creek 2 were to proceed, they would need separate points of access on the eastern side of the railroads per current PSB and Vermont State. Battle Creek 2 is a 2.2 megawatt project. We talk about it being located in this rural residential zoning area. Battle Creek 3, 1 megawatt, located in this 8.5 acre rural residential area. So those are the starting points. Those are kind of where we start taking this process of hopefully being able to incorporate feedback and input to improve these designs. Sir?
Did you buy all the land from a single owner?
Yes.
Yes,
So it was all sold as one package?
that's correct.
Is it your intent to just propose, say, on that 8-acre rectangle at the top, propose it, and then back off it, knowing that that'll never get built as a concession? And you're saying, oh, we're proposing this, but, oh, we'll make a concession to the neighbors, and we'll take that off. And you've never had any intent of making a real project there in the first place?
I don't think that's the case at all. We're investigating what we can do with the entire property. We are open to making some changes based upon the input we receive. If we were to make that concession, would you hold that against us?
Well, I mean, that's, what do you mean hold against it? It's, the chances of that rectangle being developed for solar is probably 5%.
I think the chances are a little bit on the lower side myself.
So I personally believe that it's your built-in concession so that you can go back and tell us all later, oh, we're taking into account your concerns.
Well, I think your comment's taken. I'm not going to tell you otherwise. You've already told me that you have a distrust, so it really doesn't matter how I respond to you.
Okay.
So this is why I asked they come back to us with the final plan before they go to public service board.
Yeah.
And
What
we don't do that.
we're trying to determine right now with this particular piece of property, I mean, this one here, in the conversations we've already had in town, conversation we're having tonight, the one-on-one conversations we have with some of the neighbors in the area, there are a number of issues. This one keeps coming to the top of the list. We're trying to take a close look at what the options are for that property. Can a project be done there in a way that could earn the support of the town, could earn the support of the neighbors, or not? And once we determine that, we'll have to make our own decision on how to proceed. And you guys will know how we proceed when we let you know the final site plan designs.
Correct.
Bill?
I think you might have stated that small section we're just referring to, yeah, right there. How far, again, I think you already mentioned this, how far are the panels from the edge of Route 7?
100 feet.
Pardon me, sir?
100 feet.
100 feet, that's not very, I like to put things in yards, that's only like 33 yards. That's
Right.
not very- it's quite-
Well, don't they have to be 500 feet from Route 7A?
If it follows the town plan, it does.
Right.
So I say, instead of thinking, how many feet in my house?
And then if you're gonna have screening so that from his house, they're not just looking right at the.
You gotta drive down Rice Lane, and you'll see how impractical it is to be able to sit into a screen at any natural vegetation. Again, you're looking at a flat piece of paper, you're not looking at the terrain. It really slopes rapidly there. My other concern is there's a ditch that runs from 7A right down Rice Lane, right to my front yard. That ditch was put in there in town of Bennington about 40 years ago, and the water was running in my father's basement all those years. And when they take it, I think the term they use is clear and grub. Is that the name you guys that clear this property? Clear and grub?
Clear, I want to talk to you in a minute about
Okay.
the grubbing.
Well, the term they use, clear and grub, to get that in there, I'm afraid the water runoff, no matter what they put in it, is going to go down in a ditch and not only flood me, but flood my neighbors down there. They put a culvert across, it still goes on my property and then the neighbor's property. My brother's here to tell you, I mean, we 40 years ago, that was always flooded there. From the railroad tracks west, that whole area was a pond in there for about 2 months. after the snow melted. And we just don't want to see it get that way again.
Right. Understood.
Railroad tracks around the water running right there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So do you,
Yeah.
so Brad, it's pretty clear that that long skinny rectangle, not that likely there are a lot of problems with it. Let's go back to the other one, the 2.2.
Sure.
2, so that's in rural residential. It's right up behind the Harwood Hill Motel, which now has $1 million view. It will not have $1 million view once you go there. It's also within the view of the public house, which just went through a major construction, right? For the deck, and which again is for the views.
279 for the monument.
And that's right in the middle of that, and that's also prime ag soil. And you have that butting right up, particularly right up to the Harwood Hill property, the Harwood Hill Motel property. Why don't you get rid of that one too?
Well, I mean, I'd like to come back and just broken record on you, I'm so sorry, but these are very preliminary. I think that makes sense, Joe.
Yeah, thanks.
Get some additional light in here.
How's that?
These are very preliminary.
Is that okay?
I think that's good, yeah. These are very preliminary. We wanted to be with you early to start working on the design together, and these are some great comments we're receiving. I think you're absolutely right that the way the site plan is currently shown is that it clears all the way to that shared property line between this section and the Harwood Hill Motel. I think there's some improvement, most definitely, that could be done with the design in that area, and we're taking a look at that.
Is it looking at clearing all the trees totally out of that section?
Well,
That design
yeah, one thing I mentioned earlier is that beginning with a wooded site, I think gives some good opportunity to leave some of the existing vegetation around the property boundaries to provide the public screening that we're hearing that people are wanting to see. Annette?
Given the challenges that you have with the other site, and given the fact that regions and towns want solar, why did you go buy a property instead of coming to the town, to the planning commission, and saying, we'd like to do it differently, we'd like to do a site that the public will support, and can we work with you to find the right property?
Right.
Why did you go ahead and sort of compound the problem that you already had on the other side of the site, and now you're doing it to another neighborhood? You see, there are human beings here that would be very happy to work with responsible developers. And we have to change this dynamic of how we're doing these solar sites. And your company is doing the plunk it down model that is disrespecting the community. Can you find a way to work with the town of Bennington, not on this particular site, but start over? If you have the financing, if you have the technology, if you have the ability to do it, and Bennington wants the solar, can you change your business model to do it in what I might call the Vermont way?
Sure.
And why are you doing it this way instead?
Well, let me respond to that a few different ways. I definitely take your comment. I kind of feel like that's what we are doing here. We're here early, and we're asking for feedback and input before we apply to the board. We're open to including that feedback to help the town, help the neighbors participate in the design of the site. We did not approach the town ahead of time before purchasing the property. Private purchase of property is not something that requires town review or town approval.
No, but it became known right away, and so all of a sudden, people found out about it without you guys coming to the town first and saying,
Right.
can we figure out how to do a project? And would this be a good site, or is there another good site, and how can we work with the town?
We purchased the site late last year, and we're here early this year. It's a pretty quick turnaround.
You purchased it when?
What's that?
You purchased it when?
Late last year. I don't know the exact closing date.
I don't think that's correct. I got the bill of sale, I think it's earlier this year.
It was January.
It's possibly this year, so that the time frame is even shorter.
It doesn't
between-
matter, you've purchased, you've made an investment, and now you're inflicting your decisions on the community. We need to work together.
That's exactly why I'm here
I would
tonight.
like to add to that you're coming here having done it backwards, not doing it as Annette is suggesting, which would have been to ask the town where is a good site, And not only did you already buy it, but now you're asking us to do the hard work for you and make it better so that you can get approval. I don't see why we should be doing that for you.
You know, if you would like not to participate and give us your feedback on how we
Well,
can
you force
improve,
us
that's
to do
certainly
that,
your
but
prerogative.
you're taking all the ideas that we have, and that is a way for you to suck us into sort of agreeing with the project, when I think probably a lot of us don't think any of this project is a good idea, but you sort of suck it, it's a psychological trick, I take it to be, because you are getting us to participate in this, to make it, quote, acceptable. And then it's hard for us who have participated to say, well, no, now we don't agree with it as you have left it. So it's backwards. That's what Annette is saying. It's a backwards way of doing it. You should have gone to the town and looked for a place that you know we would have all accepted instead of buying it first.
Right.
And just as you did in Apple Hill.
I hear your comment, I appreciate it. I'm not going to stop asking for feedback and input. That's why we're here. We really want to get the town and neighbors involved. Get the feedback, get the input, and make some changes here that can improve the site design. If you're not interested in participating, I can't force you to, but I hope you'd be interested.
You're not hearing me, of course, but let's leave it.
Okay. Annette, did you have some additional comments, sir?
What's in it for the neighbors to help you come up with a better project than you're presenting? I mean, I've worked on a lot of different issues, gas pipelines. It is recognized that you're asking things of the public when you come in and decide you want to do something. I've been to FERC-sponsored meetings where they actually have said you should pay the public to come to your meetings because all you're doing is using the people to advance your agenda. We are in a changing dynamic where energy is concerned. Vermonters want solar energy. What you're doing is actually hurting the effort. And your company is hurting the effort. When you choose a project like Sudbury Solar that the town is entirely opposed to, the planning commission, the select board is opposed to it. Now you come to Bennington and the town is opposed to your other two projects, and now you're doing three more, twice the size of the one the town opposed. Do you understand that there's a fundamental problem here that could be fixed simply by how you approach a community?
And I would just point back to that's why I'm here tonight. That's
So
why
would
we're
you take that back to your bosses in the Mallones, please, and tell them that to do business in Vermont, we would like communities to be a part of choosing the sites from the beginning.
I'll definitely pass that comment
Thank you.
along.
Could
I
you
approach-
get free electricity?
I
mean,
I'm afraid not. I just want
In
to,
fact,
Well, Brad, our rate is
can I just hang on just a second? I'd like to
Well, this
respond
goes
to
on,
that with
this
one
goes
other
on
comment.
her point, because in Rutland, Ecos, which is your parent, you, offered and are making, I think it's $160,000.
It was 160.
Yeah, $160,000 payment to the town because you're gonna be reducing the tax basis. Are you gonna, well, you're making the $160,000 payment.
Yes to that.
town. I know that some people out there think that maybe that's not enough, but the point is, are you gonna make an offer to pay a substantial amount to the town of Bennington so all of our property taxes are reduced and therefore we benefit that way?
I don't know. Options are on the table. It's something we've done in another community. They requested that of us. It's not something we offered. We were asked about it. And the reason for that particular request was that the mill rate in Rutland Town is extremely low compared to other communities. And the amount of tax revenue that the town would receive through the normal tax process for solar projects, they felt was unreasonably low. That rate is higher here in Bennington, and the town of Bennington would achieve a much higher rate of return from these projects.
$68,000 a year.
We haven't run the numbers, that was Stu's estimate.
$68,000 a year, but you don't put a penny in education tax, so we pick up more of that because we lose that land that's in here now, going to property, going to school tax.
Right.
None of it goes to schools.
Right. Well, this is the formula that the state's put forth on how these projects are to be taxed. In Rutland Town, we engaged in negotiation, conversation, and dialogue, and open conversation with the town and the neighbors. And that's one of the changes that came out of that conversation. As I said, pretty much everything's on the table at this point, and we're open to talking about it. Sir?
Yeah, I got a question on something. If this all goes through, and you're gonna be able to, company be able to like, show like the fire department, different ways of dealing with stuff, but I know you can't put water on.
Right.
Burn, you're gonna, that is a class. I'm just kind of trying to figure out, how much of a training you guys go through the fire department showing these panels, what we can do if there's a problem.
Absolutely, that's a great question. Every community we go into with a completed project, we reach out to the local police, sheriff, and fire department to invite them to come meet with us, schedule a time to come out, tour the site, answer questions, and we give the access codes for the gate to those departments so they can get keys. If there was ever an emergency and the site needed to be shut off by an officer or firefighter, they're going to have those codes to be able to do it in an emergency situation.
Yeah, I know you can't kill the power to that solar panel, but you can cover that completely.
Right, well, you can throw the master disconnect, which would detach it from the grid entirely.
You said you throw a switch in that solar panel, you got a switch, you're gonna have power.
Right. There are various disconnects throughout the array. That's exactly the type of thing we go over with the department in a site tour at some point, probably far in the future. And I did want to get back to one of your earlier questions about approaching the town ahead of time. We've attempted that in your district, actually, Rutland Regional Commission. We asked the Regional Commission, say, hey, we're interested in maybe doing another project in Rutland County. Could you help us identify a site that would be favorable for a solar project like this? And they looked into it, and the response we got back was, yeah, it's a good idea, but we can't really guide you on playing favorites. We can't guide you towards a specific private landowner that has a piece of property for sale. That'd be a conflict of interest. That would be favoritism. And so that was our experience in that one instance.
That's the Regional Planning Commission, that's not the town.
Well,
In
our
fact,
thought
you
was,
were here in Bennington, you were here in Bennington, you knew that you already had opposition in Bennington for your other sites, and so you had the opportunity to try and do it differently here.
right. Our thought with the Rutland Regional Commission was that starting with a wider umbrella would potentially incorporate more potential options to find the right site.
So you just deflected the discussion away from the town of Bennington's needs, which are, Bennington would like to develop solar. And you're a solar developer, so can you please work with the town of Bennington to develop solar the right way?
Right. And that's what we're attempting to do with these conversations. We're starting tonight and Monday night in one-on-one conversations. We're already having with some of the neighbors, and we hope to have a lot more of those in the future with additional neighbors to get the feedback. Again, I'm so sorry to sound like broken
I will say
records.
that I am on the Rutland Regional Planning Commission, and I did hear that an anonymous person contacted the Regional Planning Commission, and the name of the company was not disclosed. And that was how it was reported to commissioners. And so that doesn't feel very transparent or well either.
I wasn't at that meeting, I'm sorry. That was an attempt to try a new approach. It didn't particularly work in that case, but it's not something we're giving up on. This particular piece of property we have here, we're here to talk about this piece of property. I'm absolutely open to engaging in some conversations about new ways to approach new properties, for sure, for sure. Would you like to have some additional conversation with me about that sometime?
I would like you to work with the town of Bennington to develop your projects in a way that meets the town's needs. This project is a bad site. Anybody can see that with all of the issues. When you've got forest, farmland, soils, wetlands, businesses that are having to put their plans on hold because of your inappropriate development plans, I think it's a perfect time right now for your company to stop and start over.
Right.
You've got a captive audience here. Make use of it and do it right.
Not to mention you should.
I take the decision to basically, I take the, the comment and the recommendation back up and leave. And
No, that's not what
why-
I'm saying at all. I'm saying not this site. You guys obviously have plenty of money to go buy land and speculate. So why don't you just work with the community and start investing in ways that benefit the community?
Well, we're certainly open to approaching the town about additional new sites. We're here tonight to talk about this site. And ways that we can improve the design of this site. And we are open to receiving feedback, open to receiving input. If folks are interested, I can't compel anyone to do that. But we're listening.
Those two sites that are in the residential area,
Yes.
you bought that property knowing that that went against the town plan.
I don't think it does go against the town plan necessarily.
You don't think it goes against the town plan?
Not certain elements. There's nothing in the town plan that prohibits solar in rural residential at all. Now, there are many elements of the town plan that require certain design considerations. Joe mentions the scenic 7A corridor. There's a town screening ordinance. The town, just a couple weeks ago, passed some additional solar siting language, and those have to be taken into consideration. But an outright prohibition on solar in rural residential is not part of the town plan, nor could it be per state law.
For solar.
For solar,
Right.
or for any energy project.
Right, so it's actually the solar project itself that sort of compelled you to buy this piece of property, knowing that it may not conform to the town plan. I mean, it's going to be a struggle to make that conform to the town plan.
Right.
But you still buy it anyway, you're willing to take on that struggle.
Yeah, we picked up this piece of property
Right,
and now want to engage the town and the neighbors in talking about it.
right. What that's trying to say is you're a little, you already bought the property, you should have done this first. You really should have. And the confidence that made you buy this property was 248, was the energy loss. That's what compelled you to buy this. You're going to buy it and you will keep it out of the town or anybody who as much as you can.
We're not interested in doing that. So that's why we're here, to listen, to talk. And if the town of Bennington would like to do additional projects with us, we're absolutely open to suggestions on additional properties in the town of Bennington, for
If you're
sure.
not interested in doing battle, but you've required the town to respond with 7 motions on Friday on your other 2 sites, don't you consider that doing battle?
That's not this project.
I
It's
know,
a
you're
different
doing
project.
battle with the town. Please try and be good to the town and work with the town, not cost them money.
And that's why I'm here
Your
today.
lawyers.
I just have one question.
Ma'am.
So you are aware of all of the setback requirements and all the screening ordinance, fee requirement, all that kind of stuff. Does this plan adhere to those guidelines? This plan, as is presented right now?
I don't think it necessarily adheres to every single element of the town plan.
Well,
Now,
why-
the town
Let me
plan,
finish.
Sure.
Why, if you're giving us a proposal, why would you waste your time and not take those setbacks into account? Why would you do that? I don't understand.
well, the setbacks are taken into account, but I understand the wider scope of your question. As I mentioned
Why would you
earlier,
waste our time and yours?
I don't feel like we're wasting time. We chose as a starting point, as developers often do in 45-day notices, to show maximum usage of the available land on the piece of property. Now we are working with the town, working with the neighbors to try to understand how the project can be modified and improved to be a better project that could earn the support of the town and the neighbors.
But that doesn't address my question. If you have a plan right now that doesn't take the current requirements into effect, why?
Because the land is cheap.
I mean, but if you have to comply with certain language and ordinances for the town plan and for the state and, all of that kind of stuff, and this plan right here doesn't comply with that,
Right.
why? Why do you do that? I don't understand. If you're putting something in paper right here that doesn't comply already, what's the point of that? I don't understand.
Like,
This-
the town has already expressed its wishes,
Yes.
and it was all like clearly stated.
Yes.
So if you really wanted to work with the town, it's
seems that your initial plan would have already taken those into account.
Exactly.
We feel that this plan does take into account the town plan that was in place at the time we filed this 45-day notice. The town's additional solar language was implemented after these 45-day notices were out. So now we have to take a look at that and work with that. And
So the plan as presented now complies with the first town language, is that what you're saying?
it may. Now, the amount of analysis
How am I
that,
supposed to know?
what I'm hoping to communicate, and I apologize if I haven't been clear, is that this is not the final plan. And when we arrive,
This is misleading, because what you're saying is that it may or may not comply with language that's already in place in the town plan.
I don't intend to mislead, I apologize if that's the case. The goal is to get to a final site plan that is compliant with the necessary standards to get a project approved. Hopefully, we can do that by getting a plan that's supported by the town and neighbors. That's our goal.
Essentially, if you're giving me a plan right now that doesn't may or may not comply with that, if you do in fact comply with what the town says, you're going to be giving me a concession that you already know you have to do. So that is misleading.
We have a starting point here, and we hope to get your feedback on it. If there are elements that are not in compliance with the town plan from your perspective, I'd love to
That's
hear
not
those
my
from you.
perspective, it's what the town says.
Which is
I have
exactly why
nothing
we've
to
engaged
do-
the town inspector. To get
Again,
feedback from
why
them.
would you create a plan that isn't in accordance with what the town already said when you want it? It doesn't make sense.
This is a first draft. It's not a final
For Pete's
plan.
sake, I'm not going to ask this question again because you keep giving me the same answers which are nonsensical.
Will there be a second draft?
There will be a second draft, a third draft, a fourth draft, a fifth draft. We're going to do multiple iterations as we continue to get feedback, try new things, try adjustments. Here, we changed this,
Will
how's
we see
this?
those drafts?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I will be here many times over the next few months for
Before
exactly,
you file the final.
yes, definitely. Annette?
But I think I might be able to help you with your perception of how we do things. in-
Oh, that would be great.
I've reviewed many solar projects. And it is not standard to do what you're doing, which is to maximize it and then pull it back. It is standard to propose a project of a certain size. Now, I am also working on the wind issue, and it is very definitely part of the playbook of the wind industry to propose something that's too big and then pull it back. That's not how most solar developers do it in Vermont. They might shave off a little corner that has a wetland. They might make minor modifications. But this bait and switch that you're pulling here is not typical industry practice in Vermont.
Okay.
And I hope you will take that back to your partners on Wall Street.
We're taking all the comments back tonight, I guarantee it. From our perspective, we're not attempting a bait and switch. You may see it differently. We see it as a starting point and a place to find out what can be improved.
I think a great starting point, really, from my perspective, would be to provide a plan that does comply with the language that the town had in place when it initially bought the property. I think that would be, well, you just said it may or may not be. So what assurance can you give us right now-ish, within the next week or 2 weeks or whatever, that you presented us with a plan that complies? And then in black and white, in paper, you know, that says this is it. Because
Right.
what we actually have now is meaningless, really. Because it may or may not comply.
Can I add to what she said, because it's not only compliant with the town plan, but you know, I'm sure very well, having done this with many other plans, that it's one thing to abide by the language of the town plan and also the setbacks of from Route 7, which we have already heard, is 500 feet, which makes that little rectangle pretty much impossible to have a usable solar project, it seems to me. But it's also that you should know very well what neighbors want. Neighbors want screening, that's adequate. They don't want roads to come through and be objectionable. So I think you could very well have used your experience to present a first draft that would not have raised everybody's hackles to start with, and shown that you've taken all your history of what's happened to you in the past and start from that, which you haven't really either.
Right.
So that's beyond the town plan.
And
knowing that there's a hotel, a motel, and knowing that there's a restaurant, how much sense would it have been, from your perspective, to understand that nobody is going to be wanting to look outside of a restaurant and have a view completely ruined when that is the selling point of the restaurant? It should have been something that you could have predicted.
I don't like to
You
make
need to
assumptions.
come here and have people say that to you.
I prefer to work with those people directly and hear from them directly. How do we know what the neighbors want? I want to talk to the neighbors
You're
and
being
find out.
disingenuous, Brad, you know I'm talking
I really don't
about.
feel like I am. I'm not giving you the answer you're looking for, but that is my answer. And I apologize if it doesn't satisfy you.
But I'll throw in BPI also. We have an adult daycare center. This thing can sit there for those seniors who go out there in the backyard. They're going to be living right in the back of that, sort of one. A lot of investment went into that. It's historical. It's a piece of historical property. I believe it's on the registry, Boney Farm.
Yep.
It's more just a public house and Howard Hill Motel as far as the businesses that are there.
Absolutely. We've reached out to Linda at BPI. We were supposed to meet today. She couldn't make that meeting, but we're going to meet again sometime very soon.
Are you going to talk about the 5 to 7 months of heavy equipment that's going to go in there? Are you going to tell me what's going to happen to all the outcrops and big rocks? Where are they going to go? Is that place, you know what place showed it to you? Full
Sure.
of outcrops down there.
Yeah, so rock outcropping, we can't move that stuff typically. It's not cost effective to do so. So, in situations where like a post might need to go, that there's currently a rock outcropping, they typically do augured foundations with grout instead of driving the post into the ground. You mentioned 5 to 7 months. I would say once the site is clear, that is the projected construction timeline for a project of this size. We're still working out access points where that traffic would come and go. I don't have a lot of detail on that topic yet, but we hope to develop more detail in the future and share that with you as we go.
How long is it that it would take to clear all of this property? You
Sure.
say 5 to 7, but it
Right.
sounds like it would be longer than that for the clearing process.
Site clearing, 3 to 4 months possibly.
So you're talking maybe a year of work in and around that acreage.
Potentially. Sir.
I've driven from Bennington to Burlington on 2 occasions, and these solar farms are basically littered on both sides of Route 70, all the way up to Burlington.
They replaced the billboards. We did away with it 4 years ago.
That's right. So my question is, how do you propose to conceal this eyesore if it happens to go through?
Sure. Well, that's a great question. I feel like visual appearance, visual impact is definitely very high place on most people's priority list when we have these discussions.
My other question is, you can see this whole piece of land from 279 when you first come into Vermont. You can see the public house.
Yeah.
You can see the Crosby's house. You can see my son's house, the top of the roof.
And Home Depot.
It's going to be like a big rear view mirror right there. So you're going to be looking back at the yard and you're going to turn around and back.
Right. Well, the panels aren't reflective, so we got that going.
No, it's, I just can't see how you're going to possibly do it.
Right. Well, for nearby vantage points, the site offers a lot of good opportunities, I think, for screening. We have topography in our favor in a lot of directions. And also I mentioned how, because the site is wooded, we have some options here for using the existing, very dense, very thick vegetation to provide built-in screening for the projects.
I couldn't understand what you're saying.
Oh, I'm sorry. We have topography. I think there's a lot of benefits from the way the site slopes. It's not in a bowl. It's also not up on a peak. Also, the existing very thick, very dense vegetation that's on the property really allows us some built-in screening material that we could use to provide very effective screening to views around the area.
You can't block it with shrubbery or trees or anything, it's just gonna not make the project work. So you have to have something.
Well, you'd have a buffer strip of screening vegetation, and then the solar modules would be set back off of that potentially.
How
So
tall
all
is
the
it?
wildlife, once you clear that land, what about all the wildlife that's in there? What happens to that, you take that into consideration?
All the wildlife?
Right.
Right. Well, the site is being evaluated for rare, threatened, endangered species, rare, irreplaceable natural
We've
habitats.
had a lot of deer that come up there, can't come up through there anymore with the fences around it and everything else.
Right. If the site is not a deer wintering area, and we don't think it is, we're getting confirmation of that, it's not an area that's protected by the A&R in that fashion.
It's not an area of what?
It's not a deer yard by the state of Vermont, however, they have not evaluated it.
Yeah.
It could be, Rick, since they were down there last.
Yeah.
So,
So,
outside, I don't see any deer anymore.
right. The A&R is going to be involved in protecting biological resources. That includes wildlife, plant life, wetlands resources. They have specific resources that they will step in and protect, but just because something is a forest does not mean it is going to get the A&R's protection. It has to include special resources to get the protection of the A&R.
2 years ago, we had a lot of
Even if you do the industrial part of it, it's still gonna,
Right.
that's everything, and it's still gonna sort that out.
Well, let's get back to that real quick. I mean, we're talking about, what happens to the, plants and animals in here. The town of Bennington has zoned this for industrial development. What happens to those things if I'm in here with a factory or a toxic waste disposal facility or a landfill, which are all allowed uses under the town of Bennington industrial zone?
That's my concern.
There was a gravel pit there, the town made them fill it in.
Right.
I thought on Monday you stated that you would not be able to build something on that land because of the wetlands. Is that correct?
You would not be able to build in the wetlands area most likely. I doubt the A&R.
So if you wanted to build a factory on that industrial land, you could?
That is why the prior owner had never been able to sell it. BCIC, 50 years ago, when Johnson Control was operating, trying to buy something, he would not sell it. 20 years ago, I tried to buy it, he would not sell it. Okay? He wanted it, he thought someday, because the things that were going with Home Depot, Carbones, have all got pushed out that way. And it didn't happen. Unfortunately, the gentleman's at the end of his lifetime, he wants to get rid of the property.
Yep.
He did.
You missed the boat on that one.
I thought in North Carolina was focused somewhere else.
And let's had our hand up for a few minutes here. I'd like to get over
The aesthetic aspect of it, I will say bluntly that your aesthetic simulations on the Apple Phil and Chelsea project were really awful. Will you please commit to doing a better job and provide actual photographic simulations in full color that accurately portray what it will look like?
We'll definitely provide visual simulations, 3D cross sections.
I'm talking about a better quality than what you did. I mean, they were drawings, they were, grayscale, yeah, there was some, lots of nice charts, but he didn't actually provide real photographic simulations of the type I see other developers doing.
Right. A couple comments. I've heard you mention this grayscale thing before. We did not submit a single grayscale exhibit to the state of Vermont. If that's what you got from the Public Service Board, I have no control over that. All of our exhibits that we submitted were in full color.
Your visual simulations were all. That is my professional opinion, and I testify as an aesthetics expert. So I'm asking you, will you please commit to doing a better job with this site?
We're going to be working with a Vermont aesthetics firm, and they're going to be providing us with quality exhibits.
And will you ask for better quality exhibits? I don't think you're hearing my question.
Right. Well, here's the thing, and I'll be quite honest. I feel like you're trying to get me to say something that you can hold against me later.
No, I'm not. I'm asking you an honest question. Would you please do a better job?
And I'm answering, we are going to provide quality exhibits up to the standards required by the Public Service Board.
I don't know what that means. I'd like you to say, yes, we'll do a better job. Is that trying to play statute? No, I'm asking you to please commit to providing actual color photographs on which you have been superimposed the solar panels in an accurate way. Those were not done with your other projects.
We're going to be working with our consultant to provide the quality exhibits that are required. I understand your question, and that's my answer. Let's see here. I think we're close to the end of the slides, yeah. My contact information is an open door. Call, email anytime, questions. I'll be out there multiple times, and I'm letting everybody know when I'm coming through. One thing that we've heard, and this may speak to your previous question, Annette, is that it can be difficult sometimes to get copies of documents that are filed with the Public Service Board. We've set up this website, BattleCreekSolarProject.com. I apologize for the very bad website design. At the moment, we're going to try to clean it up, but we're going to be posting all information and documents and exhibits that we file with the Public Service Board on this website for public download. It'll be available in full resolution, full color, and we want to make that available so it's easier for you to get copies of the things that we are sending to the Public Service Board. At the end of the day, what we send to the Public Service Board when we file for a petition, and what we send to the Public Service Board in supplemental filings, that is the project. Those filings to the Public Service Board are what we are saying we are going to try to build. And we are not there yet. I think we have a lot of work to do between now and then to find ways to improve the site design. And the plan in front of you today probably is not going to reflect what we file with the board. When we do file something with the board, as I mentioned to Joe, we will be in touch to present that to you before we file. And after we file, it will be available on this website for your review.
Where did the name Battle Creek come from?
The gentleman that named it pulled the name Battle from the Bennington Battle Line.
Who named it?
One of the other gentlemen in our company.
So we're going to be able to see what you plan to, will we be invited to provide feedback on that?
Yeah, well,
Or is this it?
no, this is definitely not it.
I know I already asked this
Yeah.
question, but I keep like getting a different sense of like, sort of like, you want feedback, and you just want to take it, and you're going to take it back to some other folks that are going to assess it and respond to it.
Mhm.
Will we get a response?
Yes, so,
Like, will it be presented sort of like, I went back, I told them this, and this is what they came back to me with, and here's a new draft.
yes,
It's gonna be like that.
yes, it's an iterative process. We're back with multiple drafts. This process has worked well for us in other locations.
What town did it work real well in?
Well, we've had a number of projects in California, a number of projects in Indiana.
If-
We've had another project here in
I
Vermont.
did not, they laughed, but I wasn't trying to be snide. I hope you know that I wasn't. When I
What-
asked that question.
what other towns?
I wasn't trying to be snide at all when I asked the question of which towns did it work
Sure,
well
well,
in.
we've done a lot of projects in other states,
Can you
and
give
right
me
now,
the name of a town? Because then we can talk to their people about how that went for them.
right. One town that comes to mind is Slayton, Minnesota. It's one of our SLAYTON.
Can you give us a list of people that you, towns and places that you put in?
Yeah, absolutely.
It might be a way that some trust can be restored if we can find that
Sure.
other folks have found a way to work with your company.
Right.
What about Vermont?
Successfully.
Yeah, that would be.
Well, the only project we have operating in Vermont right now is Sudbury. And
Yeah, that's-
I would say that we did not go through a process like this in Sudbury to this degree.
They're pretty upset.
Greg, you said you did something in Indiana. Did you do one in Sullivan, Indiana?
No.
Because I know some people, where I'm from, I said there was a new one there, so I just want
Gotcha. Yeah, those are about 3 years old for us there, all in northern Indiana.
yes, so.
Gotcha. Ma'am?
Back to my question earlier, if by chance you did find out that property values were lower, do the property owners get compensated at all by your company?
I don't know.
I mean, it's sort of like she was saying, what's in it? Well, that was saying, what's in it for us, not that I look into.
Right, yeah.
You
No,
know, I
it's-
just try, I have to bring information back to
Yeah.
my family, this is something that they,
It's
you know.
it's a good question.
Have
That's,
have you ever been in that predicament before, where you've had to compensate other parties?
we have never done that before. I'm not taking it off the table, but that is way above my pay grade to comment on whether or not we commit to something like that. So I will definitely take it back to the team and ask. Yeah.
The question that I wanted to ask when I walked in, I said I was going to ask a question.
Sure.
I went to the Sudbury farm or array today to see what the panels look like and understand the height and how it was going to work, and also to listen to what the inverter pad sounded like and how much. So it's pretty loud. It sounds a little bit like a hair dryer going off in the next room or something, or an HVAC. It only makes this noise when it's the height of the day, and it's quiet at night, silent. Also, Brad did say that there are other types of inverters that they can install. Instead of one big thing on a pad, they can do multiple small units that don't have, the noise that you get is a fan. So you can put in like 50 little ones that don't have a fan that are silent. And you had a few there.
We have a few projects where we've done that.
Well,
Yes.
the gentleman that was there pointed to something, and that wasn't what
That wasn't, it looks like
It
that.
looks like that, but that wasn't.
That wasn't one of those,
Okay,
yes.
anyway, I'm just giving you guys the information that I gleaned. So, I ran into a friend.
Sure.
Right on my way here, and they come from another state, and they said, there's a terrible high-pitched noise that comes from them that you should ask about,
Okay.
and that you should be aware of. I don't know if anybody knows what that is, or if you do. I did hear, there is a high pitch in that white, it's kind of a white noise, it's kind of like the sound that we're hearing right now from the air conditioner or whatever that is. It's a sort of a white noise. I imagine if you were right next to it, it would drive you nuts, but if you weren't, it wouldn't.
Right.
And the vegetation might be sufficient to absorb that noise so that it wasn't bothersome.
However, we really
But-
don't know whether the spraying and the vegetation will be.
Not yet.
Correct. So, but if there were some.
Well, there's a couple questions in there I'd like to answer.
Yeah, the one that I wanted to really focus on was the high-pitched noise, which could really, really be horribly unpleasant for animals and kids.
I would agree. It doesn't sound pleasant at all. I'm not aware of any element of solar project that's capable of generating noise other than the inverters and transformers that are at the central pad like you observed today.
Right.
The fan noise that you mentioned comes from the inverters. And the goal of the design of the project is to position that pad in a location where it's far enough away from any property boundaries for that noise to be louder than ambient background noise by the time it gets to the property boundary. The board has, the Department of Public Service has some decibel level thresholds that typically are required to be met. And we absolutely believe that these projects can be designed in that way so that, ma'am.
Would each project have one of those, or will there be just one central one? If you did all
Sure.
three projects.
If we did Battle Creek 3, that's on the skinny rectangular piece, that would have one equipment pad. If we did Battle Creek 2, that's the one next to the motel, that would have one equipment pad. If we did Battle Creek 1, that's the industrial area, that would have two of those equipment pads.
Wow. So you're talking four.
Yes. Now, I think it's important to note, standing right next to the inverter pad, I would agree. At high production, they can get a little bit loud standing right next to it. But as with any noise source, as you get further and further away from it, it gets quieter, quieter, quieter. And what we're saying is we'd like to place these in locations where Yeah, if you're standing right next to it on our property, you'll be able to hear it. If you're not on our property, you won't be able to distinguish it from ambient background noise.
But some areas around here, you can have noise here, not hear it too much. But you're gonna hear it quite a way away, a lot louder amplified. Echoes.
Right.
A lot of areas, you know, echoes, big time.
We
It
have-
bounces back off the trees, the backgrounds, and
Right.
goes back.
We have no interest in creating noise effects for anybody, and we're required to submit detailed sound testimony showing the decibel ratings of the equipment, the distances involved with property lines, and how that noise drops off as they go into the property.
I can think of the areas close to there that I can yell, you can hear my voice. Long ways coming back at me.
Sure, and your voice would be louder than this equipment if you're
That's
yelling.
just the yell, you know, I mean, this constant hum noise. When somebody is sitting there listening to the TV or outside, enjoying fresh air, just hear the constant humming, you know, it's going away.
Well, you'll have to judge us on what we come up with at the end of the day, but what I'll say today, and you can take it for what it's worth today, and it may not be a lot to some of you, but we're going to design the site in a way so that outside of our property boundaries, the noise from this project will be indistinguishable from ambient background noise.
It says here 44 decibels sounds like bird calls, the lowest limit of urban ambient sound, a conversation at home. A quiet rural area has a 30 decibels is the ambient noise. So 45 is the legal cap. And that's a little, you know, sort of louder. I'm sure you could probably download an app that would allow you to play a tone.
Let me-
Noise is an issue that you need to take into consideration, particularly for the second project, which butts the motel.
Absolutely
People
agree.
don't want to come into Vermont for peace and quiet and be sleeping in their motel room and hear a hum.
I absolutely agree.
You know, and your big facility, which is going to be right up the way you propose it here, is going to be right up against the motel. You know, it's going to have
No vegetation to stop.
Right.
Do they run 100% of the time?
No. That noise that Pamela described only occurs at times of high load, so very sunny days, high noon, not at all at night, and in periods of less sun, that noise drops off significantly. We describe the maximum possible noise that can be generated, and we try to design as if that's happening 24 hours a day.
Will you be bringing in a real noise expert this time and one available for cross-examination, unlike what we did with the other two projects? Where you just had somebody from California model it and you didn't present an expert?
Right. That's a loaded question there, but we will be submitting noise testimony regarding
Will you
the.
bring in a real person who is an expert witness to cross-examine at the public service?
We'll have someone that's qualified to testify on the topic, yes.
Well, you testified before and you weren't qualified to testify, so you're saying you will have somebody qualified to testify this time?
We'll have somebody qualified for board requirements, absolutely. Are we running out of steam?
Let me make a couple of comments like that to my neighbors. I hope we all take, when they file, if they file, you exercise your right to have party status in the proceeding, okay? Those are interests, you have intervening status in it also, and I encourage you all to do it. I will suggest, and maybe Annette will argue with me on this one, there are more people in the state of Vermont concerned about this project than just us. I was in Montpelier on Thursday with Michael King. We listened to testimony on a Senate bill that's may come out this year, but it's not going to go far enough on giving the towns more deference using Margaret Cheney, who's on the board, public service board, her words, in these projects. And so I would encourage us all, seeing how it's an election year, to get a hold of our senator, Brian Campion, who sits on the Natural Resources and Energy Committee, express your concerns, our concerns with Brian. Also get to our representatives. And by the way, I'll introduce Dr. Jackie Kelly back here, who's going to be hopefully our District 2-1 Democratic representative next year. Somebody who does support the town of Bennington in the district. So pay attention to this thing. Margaret Cheney, as you know, she's on the public service force. She testified in front of this bill with Senate, what is it, Senate 240, 140?
230.
230, which may come out this year. I asked Chairman Klein to get it out because that shows the people of Vermont, there's 118 towns signed down the Rutland resolution. Right?
It's up to 150 now.
Is it? That's, the legislators finally paying attention. We're fed up, okay? And I feel bad because I introduced, along with others, a speed program because the intent of that at the time was to encourage net metering, things like the Nets doing on her home out there. And unfortunately, it expanded to where lawyers got involved from outside, they're buying cheap land, okay? And then they're forcing stuff down here, and they're winning some and losing some. So I would encourage you, and I know, I sense based on my performance on Monday night, my phone's been ringing off the hook. The town of Bennington does not want this. It's not our backyard kind of thing. It's not the right place for it. And you're sitting in a $16 million geothermal building right now. That's how much we think. That's money I got from the Veterans Home for geothermal here. You recall, I worked with the town. We got that small hydro out there feeding our water treatment plant. We've got other solar projects going in town. We've got net metering going in town. We are an energy. A statement was made the other day that Regional Planning Commission doesn't think we're meeting our goals. Well, we've got a great energy plan. We're working on it. The unfortunate thing about our energy plan, statewide, it's all on renewables. We're forgetting about Efficiency Vermont, who's here today. They're doing a great job. We're forgetting about conservation. We never talk about that stuff. But it's all part of energy if we want to get rid of this greenhouse gas we got here. So I'm saying that as a citizen, Rick, your neighbor, talk to our representatives. It's an election year. You know, they're all going to be going back up there. They're going to be trying, and let's let them know how we feel. Unfortunately, they didn't get this bill in the Senate until the second year of biennium. Didn't allow enough time for testimony doing all this stuff. I'm going to encourage Brian to make sure it's the first thing he does when he gets back up there in January next year.
Let's hope that's not too late.
Well, you know, we can't stop here.
Yeah, that's a fact.
And I remind everybody, you know, it's like, I was the first recipient of Renewable Energy Vermont's Champion of the Year for legislative renewable energy. You don't think I feel bad?
Yeah.
Huh?
We didn't expect to be colonized by outside solar companies.
Yeah.
Nobody expected that.
If we were a Vermont company, would it be any different?
No.
Brian, Brad, offer,
Yeah.
Fair enough then.
Brad, again, I'll offer this facility, and you want to come back and talk to us, just coordinate with me?
Absolutely.
If you feel it's suitable for what you're trying to do here?
This has been great.
Plenty of parking.
I'd like to have a number of these meetings before we file. To your point, Pamela, you will see drafts, multiple drafts. I want to talk about who made this change, how do you feel about that? Again, I'm coming at this with a presumption that there is a design that works for the town and for the neighbors. And I'd like to work with you to dig and find that design.
I would recommend that if you come back with this draft, that the major change not be the removal of the small array north on Rice Lane. Because I think that if you're trying to build trust, you've heard people say that they believe that that was just put there to freak everyone out, so that when you take it away, it seems like you're giving something.
Right.
So I don't think that's gonna work. I just would, I'm honestly trying
Sure.
to like, I'm imagining that you're insincere in saying you want to win back trust, and I'm just observing that that would be counterproductive to that goal.
That's a tough one because if I intentionally kept it on there,
I'm not saying to keep it on, I'm saying to take that off and give something substantive, not just that.
right. There's work to be
Does that
done.
make sense? Anybody, like?
Yeah, there's work to be done on all three footprints. I
I'm
think.
just thinking it'll be a waste of your time if you come back with the same plan minus that one thing. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, that's not gonna help build trust.
That's all I'm saying.
This concession, I took that one off,
Right.
that's not.
Well, there's been some great feedback, and people are talking not just about that one area. We got some good feedback on the other two sites as well. And there's a lot to potentially incorporate into a draft revision.
What you just said about you were a Vermont company,
Mhm.
I think it was more if you were a Vermont native, it makes a difference.
I hope that's not the case here in Bennington, because that shouldn't matter.
You would understand, living around here, growing up.
You
Well, you want to know, you're going to look at it, and why you're part of it, you know?
I would hope that the town is able to evaluate this project on its own merits and not where a representative is involved.
It has to do with whether you're going to meet.
Are only Vermonters capable of being good neighbors?
No, absolutely not. We hope that others
I will say that some of the worst sites I see are also not just yours, but some of the Vermont companies. So it's across the board. Solar developers need to do it differently. We need to stop plunking these projects down on land we've already purchased or leased. We need to come into the community ahead of time and say, let's work together to find the right sites for the community.
Well, I apologize we're not here as early as you would like us to have been, but we are here, and I hope we can get something good out of this conversation.
Are there any more other projects in Bennington that you're looking at, or Bennington County? Any other pieces of land
In Bennington,
about that?
not that I'm aware of. In Bennington County, I don't really know. There may be. I have not been shown any.
Do you have any other projects aside from the Rutland one? Is there anything else your company's doing?
That we're like actively working on. I think this one and the Otter Creek one are our big pushes right now.
Are you actively looking for more property in Bennington County, in Bennington?
We're always open to good sites in any location.
So you're always looking at that.
Bennington and other areas as well.
If you find a site that you like in Bennington, will you go to the BCRC first before you purchase it, your town?
I will suggest that to our team. I can't make that commitment. It's above my pay grade.
Is there any way to get somebody here who can answer some of these questions? For whom it's not above their pay grade?
Right. It's a great question. I'll take it back to the team and ask. That hasn't been a request that we've had a lot of luck with in the past. A lot of us have jobs, roles to fill at our places of employment, and my job is to work with the public on these projects. I'm available for questions and discussions ongoing, but if we're absent for tonight, we can close it up. I'll be back. My phone number, email. Please don't hesitate to wait until the next time we meet. If you have a question, please contact me. It's an open door anytime. More than happy to chat. Thanks so much for your time tonight, everybody. I appreciate it.